Steam rejigs the hardware survey. We talked to Rhys Jones, co-founder of Wavebox, about his cloud aggregation app. Nvidia kills its GeForce affiliate program, and our next giveaway is Pillars of Eternity 2 Deadfire, right here on Mostly Linux, on Mostly Gaming. And we're back with episode 0.06 of this perpetually beta podcast. We're actually, maybe we're going to refer to it as early access. It'll be early access forever, because we do not intend to ever leave beta. We're going to continue with a beta podcast because we're never going to be in a position where we're going to fully release. We're kind of like Google. If Google will have perpetual betas for nearly everything, and if the most popular games on Steam are early access games for years at a time, what right do we think that our tiny little podcast here will ever be anything other than an early access beta? So this is episode 0.06 of the Mostly Linux on Mostly Gaming podcast beta. Anyway, let's jump right into it this morning, because there's a lot of juicy news to talk about. We're looking forward to talk to Rhys Jones as well, of Wavebox. I discovered that app just last week, and it's changed my workflow. So we called him up and got him on the line. We'll be talking to him a little bit later on. But right here, first and foremost, what I'm going to jump into what I think is the lead story of the week, which is that Steam or Valve has rejigged the hardware survey, and this caught me by surprise, but ultimately it's not that surprising. So why don't we just jump into the story here and see what it's all about. So as you know, Steam provides a monthly hardware and software survey, and this basically identifies who's using what operating system, what GPU, what CPU, more or less platform information. And the survey pops up according to some rules that are not clear to anybody, to be perfectly honest with you. It pops up sometimes apparently randomly. I've had it pop up several times in the same week on the same system, but that's apparently not supposed to happen. So Valve put out a statement to basically identify what what the hardware and software survey is supposed to do and what it hasn't been doing. And let me just read from their report here. This is Steam Hardware Survey Fix, May 2nd, 2018. The latest Steam hardware survey incorporates a number of fixes that address overcounting of cyber cafe customers that occurred during the prior 7 months. Historically, the survey used a client-side method to ensure that systems were counted only once per year, in order to provide an accurate picture of the entire Steam user population. It turns out, however, that many cyber cafes managed their hardware in a way that was causing their customers to be overcounted. Around August 2017, we started seeing larger than usual movement in certain stats. Yeah, no kidding. Notably an increase in Windows 7 usage, an increase in quad-core CPU usage, as well as changes in CPU and GPU market share. The period also saw a large increase in the use of simplified Chinese. All of these coincided with an increase in Steam usage in cyber cafes in Asia, whose customers were being overcounted in that survey. It took us some time to root cause the problems and deploy a fix, but we are confident that as of April 2018, the Steam hardware survey is no longer overcounting users. And all I can say is, wow, that is big news, because Linux users have been angst-filled since roughly August 2017, when the user base for Linux declined from roughly half of 1%, granted not high, to as low as a quarter of 1%, which is a 50% decline. And then all of the other wonky stuff that happened in the survey as well at the same time. And our view, the view of many people, pundits, and just casual viewers of this data, was that this was the PUBG moment, that PUBG had invaded China. The user base for that game was climbing rapidly throughout the fourth quarter and the summer of last year, and that all of these new Chinese gamers were coming to the game, playing it, and they were all using Windows 7 effectively and playing PUBG. For a period, Windows 7 became the single most popular operating system on Steam, which is crazy because that is a 10-year-old operating system, 5, 8, whatever. It's a pretty old operating system, and for it to kind of suddenly pop up was unusual, but it was an unusual time because PUBG is an unusual game in terms of its popularity at the time. So angst-filled Linux gamers and users saw the decline and were fearful that if we were not irrelevant before, we were quickly becoming irrelevant now. And even last week, before this came out, last week I went through the numbers to try to figure out what is the user base for Linux gaming. And my calculations, back of the envelope numbers on episode 0.05, if you want to go back and take a listen, were that it was probably closer to 1%, perhaps as high as 2%. I was comparing it versus what was reported at the time for March was 0.33, and I found that number low. Based on other data points that we were able to find. So this week that number, looking at the stats again, has popped up to 2.55, which is more or less where it was before this glitch of Steam Cafe users happened. If we take a look at the user base, top OS version is Windows 10 64-bit, but when we break it down to the rest of the operating systems, Windows 7, as a result of these adjustments, has declined by almost 21% to 36%. If that decline has moved Windows 7 down to second spot, which is more, it makes more sense. I don't know anybody that uses Windows 7 anymore, to be perfectly honest with you. So Windows 10 64-bit is at 53%, Windows 7 64-bit is at 36%, and then a big decline. Really, those are the two big operating systems that are used on Steam, Windows 10 and Windows 7. They account for 90% of all of the users. Just Windows 7 64-bit and Windows 10 64-bit. Third place goes to Windows 8.1 64-bit at 4%. All OS X usage is just under 3%, and all Linux usage is at 0.55%. Again, last week we ran some numbers. I think, depending on this is not a survey that is done in a way that is free from error, as we see. So these are the numbers here. I would still kind of stand by that the usage base, the user base in total is probably closer to 1% based on other data points. Again, you can go back to our episode last week and hear more about that. But interesting stuff. As I said, this has caused a lot of consternation in the Linux community since this stuff happened. Interesting, I mean, it happened around the same time as PUBG was becoming popular, and so it was easy to basically say that is the cause of the large shift that suddenly happened in numbers. There was probably some causality related to that, but the effect was apparently over exaggerated. But there was another interesting post last week that I saw, just kind of related to this, on Reddit. Came out by a user by the name of Alcazar82, and so he posted some numbers in terms of what percentage of the top games and what percentage of the top games are playable on Linux. And so he, was basically referring back to his Reddit post. He said, at the end of last year, I posted here about an analysis of the top 10 and top 100 games played on Steam and how many had Linux support. And his numbers were, this for last year, that 6 out of the top 10 games were playable on Linux, had Linux native support. Different than being playable. I include games that are playable silver or better on Wine as being Linux playable. But these are Linux native. 6 out of the top 10, 47 out of the top 100. And the results today are 7 out of the top 10 and 42 out of the top 100. So a slight increase on the top 10 and a slight decrease on the top 100. Now, he identifies that there is some... look, numbers lie all the time. Numbers, okay, let me just make that clear. Numbers don't lie, but people that interpret numbers lie in terms of their interpretation. So if we take a look at the numbers, what Alcazar82 does here is he says, I took a look at the daily peak players and found that at today's peak, 1.7 million out of 4 million, or about 43% of the players, were playing a Linux-supported game. The numbers are quite heavily skewed by PUBG, which accounts for roughly about 1.6 million players at peak today. Excluding PUBG, we have 1.7 million out of 2.5 million players, or about 70% of players online right now are playing Linux-supported games, which seems high to me. I mean, if true, 1.7 million of 2.5 million, roughly, are rounds up to about 70% of the players are playing Linux-supported games, which to me seems very high. So I popped into the survey here to try to figure out what that means. So these are the numbers as of this morning here, roughly 11:30 a.m. on a Saturday morning, Eastern Standard Time. We have PUBG number 1 here with roughly 1.9 million current players at this moment. And then a big drop down to Dota 2 and Counter-Strike Global Offensive. Both of which, of course, have Linux versions, both of which are Valve games, and both of which are perpetual juggernauts on the list. But, those two games combined right now have fewer gamers than just PUBG. In fact, yes, if you take a look at all of these games combined, the bottom 9 games combined right this minute have fewer people playing them than PUBG alone. That is how big PUBG is. And Fortnite is even bigger, and it's not counted here. Fortnite, I saw statistics, I don't have them here. Fortnite is roughly 3 times. These are streamer numbers, perhaps. So again, we're comparing apples and oranges. But 3 times more players of Fortnite than PUBG is not perhaps outrageous, and certainly twice. But if that's the case, then the top 10 Steam games combined are being played less than Fortnite alone, including PUBG. That's a big game, folks. That's a big game, Fortnite. In any case, so PUBG is an outlier. That will not be coming to Steam. That will not be coming to Linux anytime soon. So there's no that will continue to be popular unless some game replaces it that is popular, that is a Linux game. Probably a Valve game would be the only thing that could do that at this point. It doesn't look like that's going to change. So if we cut that out and basically take a look and say, okay, that's not there. How does the rest of it rank? Then it actually looks pretty good. So Dota, Counter-Strike, Team Fortress 2, Football Manager, and Payday, and Ark Survival. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of the top 10. I'm not sure where the Redditor or the Reddit poster came up with 7, but these things change all the time. So here we've got 6 of these are playable, including number 2, 3, 7, 8, 9, and 10. That's pretty good. That's pretty good for a platform with 0.55% of the user base. And I'm gonna guess that's actually more than OS X, because Payday 2, yes, is available on Linux, but it is not available on Mac, and the rest of them are available on both. So interesting numbers here. At the end of the day, I guess it doesn't matter. What if the game that you want to play is not available, then does it really matter that 9 other games are? That's the way that I look at it. The game that I play the most that is not available on Linux is Divinity Original Sin 2, and that ranks. Is it even ranking up here? It doesn't even look like it's in the top 100. That would surprise me, though, that it's not in the top 100. I don't see it there. If I see it, if I miss it, I missed it. But it doesn't look like it's in the top 100 right now. But that's the game that I play. So even if 90 other games are playable on Linux in the top 100, for me it wouldn't matter, right? But it does matter for the size and the health of the community. But I'm just kind of thinking here. Steam may not be as popular today. We may be seeing the first dents in Steam that have ever existed, because the top game in the world right now is Fortnite, and that is not a Steam game. And the second game is probably PUBG, though I gather that it may be declining. That's a Steam game. And the third one is, without a doubt, League of Legends, which is not available on Steam, followed by, maybe CSGO. I don't know what other game would be there. I guess for sure then Overwatch and Hearthstone would also be up there. Definitely close to CSGO, I would think. Sorry, Dota. So let's just think here. So you've got Overwatch and Hearthstone. I'm going to say those are going to be in the top 10. Maybe in the top 5. Fortnite would be 1. I'm going to say PlayerUnknown. PUBG is going to be number 2. League would be 3. For sure, League is bigger than Dota. So League would be 3. Dota would be 4. Looking at these numbers here, CSGO maybe 5. But then I'm going to say Hearthstone and Overwatch. So, of these top 10 games, you have League, Fortnite, Overwatch, Hearthstone. 4 of the top 10 for sure are not available on Steam. And those are probably in the top 6 or 7. And Fortnite alone is bigger based on these numbers right here. Fortnite alone, I'm going to say right this minute, is bigger than PUBG and the top 10 Steam games combined. So we may be seeing the first cracks in Steam in terms of player usage, and I am frankly surprised to come to that conclusion because that's not where I was going when we started this part of the discussion. But let's take a break, and we'll be right back with the next story. And we're back. Thanks for sticking with us here on Mostly Gaming with Mostly Linux. Let's jump into our next story here. This is an interesting one because, hashtag fail and all that kind of stuff. Nvidia announced that it is killing its GeForce affiliate program. And this is a good thing for gamers. So for those of you that are not aware of what was going on here, basically Nvidia came up with this idea. It was going to be basically this GeForce partner program that was going to help its customers and partners identify high quality products that were Nvidia specific. So let me just go into the business kind of case here of why Nvidia was trying to do this and why there was such a backlash and they were forced to cancel it. So right now, if you buy, for example, a Republic of Gamers card from Asus, you can get a ROG card that works, that's a GTX, Nvidia GTX flavored version, or you can get a ROG card that is a Radeon GPU card. And Asus focuses on their own brand being Republic of Gamers, and they want that to be front and center because it identifies the product as their brand. Makes it simpler for Asus to separate itself from the rest of the crowd, and people develop goodwill with that brand and they look for a ROG card, regardless of whether they're looking for Nvidia or AMD. So Nvidia didn't like that because it puts Asus first, right? When you're thinking ROG, you're not thinking Nvidia, you're thinking Asus. And Nvidia wants you to think of them first. So they came up with this affiliate program which would effectively prevent Asus from calling their AMD card the same name as their Nvidia card. So Asus in this case came up with a new brand, Aries. And that Aries brand would be for AMD's card, and the ROG brand would be for the Nvidia card. ROG being their premier brand, let's say, the one that everybody is aware of, would stick with Nvidia because Nvidia sells more cards per year than AMD. And so if you are out there looking for a card and you look up your favorite card because you've got a ROG card now, a 480 or whatever, and you look it up, you can't find that. The only thing you can find is the ROG card that is an Nvidia specific card, which is confusing for the consumer, of course, because now they need to learn that they need to look for the Aries card if you're looking for the AMD. It's also a problem now for Asus because they need to split up their marketing budget between Aries and ROG, run two different campaigns, set up different packaging, and put them in different parts of the store. So insidious is a good way to put it. Somebody, a brand manager at Nvidia had this idea. I don't think they're evil. I think they said, this would be a good idea. We want to control our brand. That's a famous kind of marketing line that people use all the time. We want to own our brand. We want to control our brand. But there was an outcry for all of the reasons that I just mentioned, which are that the manufacturer of the car, the ASUS, companies like that in the world, and the consumers all lose. And Nvidia is the only kind of winner of the situation. And Nvidia trying to kind of roll this through this idea that, look, you don't have to pay for it, we're not going to control the supply, this is just simply something that will make our customers better off by identifying quality, blah 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 blah, right? Of course they didn't want to monetize it, of course they didn't want to do any of the other stuff. What they wanted to do was separate the brands, separate the existing premium brands that everybody is familiar with their card, and then to relegate the AMD cards with the sub brands. So AMD called foul, and Kyle Bennett at Hard OCP published an investigative report on the program, one that called into question NVIDIA's intentions and the purported benefits of the program. Yeah, no kidding. And then it says here, this is interesting, AMD actually shopped the story to Hard OCP. So it seemed, that to me reads like AMD sponsored the investigative report and then shopped the story to OCD. I can't see what else that means, but that's fine. AMD ran a study. They shopped the study around. Hard OCP picked it up. They published this report that basically put into question how the GeForce Partner Program would impact consumer choice, and as I just described, it would impact consumer choice, increase confusion, and separate the brands. AMD then fired back at NVIDIA over the controversial program because it would clearly hurt AMD the most. It would also hurt companies like ASUS, but AMD would effectively be relegated to the Aries brands of cards, and all of the card brands that are basically out there right now would no longer be in a position to be used with AMD. Now, to be clear, NVIDIA was not forcing anybody to do this, but if you wanted to become an affiliate, a GeForce partner, you had to follow that. And while NVIDIA was basically saying that there's no strings attached, we're here to help you market better and so forth, we're going to provide a host of perks, including early access to products and enhanced marketing support. In this era of very tight GPU supply, which hopefully is coming to an end, people and companies were worried that companies feared, let me just read from the report, that NVIDIA would hold back allocation of GPUs if they chose not to participate in the program. In other words, there's no strings attached, we're only here to help, but, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, if you are a member of the partner program, you might get more cards to manufacture and supply to your customers. And it was an exercise in using your market dominance to basically hurt the competition. And it's good to see that the free market forced that to fail. Because there was blowback from AMD, certainly there was blowback from users, there was blowback from manufacturers. And it forced NVIDIA to kill the program and cancel it completely, which is the right thing to do. So GPP is officially dead. That is a pro-consumer death, and we're happy to see that it happened. In any case, we're going to take a break right here, and we're going to come back with Rhys Jones of Waybox.io. And we're back. Happy to have here with us today Mr. Rhys Jones, who's co-founder of Wavebox. Now, you guys have heard me talking about this for some time here on my Twitter stream and also just earlier on this podcast. I discovered Wavebox last week, and it basically transformed my workflow, and that's pretty impressive. When you get older, you're fixed on how you work, and one of the challenges that I have is that I have I've probably got 50 different cloud accounts, and I try to figure out a way to aggregate them. Firefox has recently become my favorite way to do it, because each of the applications launches in a container. And so I can have multiple Twitter accounts and multiple Gmail accounts, each in their own container, which seemed to solve the problem. But it's messy, costs a lot of CPU and memory power. And every time you load it up, you either have to default all of these apps to open, which sometimes you just want to use your browser, or you got to reload them. And so Wavebox has solved that problem. So I wanted to reach out and find out, who is behind this and how they came up about it. And that's why we've got Rhys Jones, co-founder of Wavebox. So Rhys, thank you for joining us here at Mostly Linux on Mostly Gaming.
Great, thank you. Delighted to be here.
Pleasure, and thank you for the app. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and about Wavebox and about how this came to be?
Sure, absolutely. So, as quite a lot of these tools that kind of find a good kind of niche, this one was born out of a need to scratch our own itch. Similar to your experience, we were kind of operating in a place where we had lots of different online accounts, a lot of cloud services that we use, and we found that using the browser was, whilst passable, it works. It wasn't actually geared to basically being the go-to place for complete use during the entire day. So we started off, co-founder of Thomas Beverly kind of created this open source tool. And from there, we found that actually it really worked in being able to give you focus in what you were using on a cloud kind of productivity app. So, if I'm using Zero, or if I'm doing something in Google Docs, I can just use the app and be kind of comfortable in that space. And it kind of grew from there, really. We originally put it out as open source. We're very kind of open in terms of how Wavebox runs, and through our own use and through the feedback we get from our other users, it's actually grown now into quite a good productivity tool. And I think we're catching the coattails of everybody moving and using more and more cloud services, but it does sit there in a good location in terms of being something that gives you something that is focused, allows you to bring these tools to the fore without the distractions and the fan kind of whizzing experience you might have of, I don't know if you're like me, 100 tabs open in Chrome. That was me before I was using Wavebox.
It actually, for me, my use of the browser has declined dramatically because I also use a Chromebook, for example, and the browser has really become the operating system in a lot of ways. And for those of us that use Linux, that is a positive thing, because to the extent that you can use the same apps on Linux that you can on other platforms, it really reduces the barrier to entry. Now, one of the reasons that I don't like Chrome is that I really appreciate the containerization that Firefox has added, where each tab can be running in its own container. Now, you've added that. I mean, when I was looking at it, I was kind of messing around, and I thought, when people would ask me about containerization, I would basically say Google is never going to add that to Chrome. It actually is bad for advertisers, because they want to be able to see what you're doing in every tab. And so that is a potential advantage for Firefox if they want to push that. But unfortunately, many of my extensions work only on Chrome, and so I'm probably not the only one that has that problem. But that's an issue that you've solved as well, because there's containerization. How are you working that?
Absolutely, yes. We have an approach to containerization that has two focuses. One is from an identity point of view, and another from a security point of view. And it's exactly like you say. How often have you found that in Chrome, using something where you're logged in on one Google account, you try and open a link or share something, and all of a sudden it goes to another Google account, and it all gets confused. So on Wavebox, everything is completely compartmentalized in a way that allows you to say, this is my work account. This is my home account, or we've got a shared account between a bunch of us doing this kind of thing, and it'll never cross overlap unless you really want it to do so. So that's really good in being able to manage the identity and having the focus of that in a very clear compartment. Also, from a security point of view, it's very good because it means you're not leaking any identity. Anything that is stored from one area is never kind of exposed onto another one. And we actually take this through to sandboxing and all sorts of other things, which basically make sure that your visibility, again, is very focused in terms of only the required elements to actually be logged into that service and no more. There's also nice kind of benefits from that, because it means you can kind of wind down some of these identities, and if they're not being used, but still have kind of like a background link to that to notify of anything that's cropped up. It's something else that Wavebox does quite well, which is one of these things that being able to sleep services. So basically, if I'm at work, I'm not logged in on my home accounts, but there is a sleeping service that is actually checking for any notifications there. And if something crops up, I'll see that, and then I can decide to bring that to the focus and deal with whatever that's cropped up. So these compartmentalizations, both from a productivity point of view and a security point of view, is something that is pretty core to Wavebox.
Yeah, and that's a terrific. For privacy focused users, that is you've effectively brought compartmentalization to the Chromium browser, which is, I believe, the backbone to this. Is this basically an Electron app?
It is, yes. So if you kind of look at the kind of stack that Wavebox uses, we use V8, which is the JavaScript engine in Chromium, the Chromium kind of UI. There's Node there as well, which runs the core kind of Wavebox thing, completely separate to what you're doing online, but it's the thing that runs all the internal engine. And then an instance then for each kind of browsing session is then kind of like a slimmed down version of Chromium for that. That kind of element allows us to kind of bring in different things that work the way that you want to. An example of this, for example, is spell check. I'm talking to you from Wales, so I speak Welsh and English, and I quite like when I'm actually using my tools to have a multilingual spell check available. Now, because we can actually bring in some of the functions that's running in Wavebox into the site that I'm using in the browser kind of container, I can then have these multilingual spell check capabilities that either doesn't exist already in Chromium because of whatever setup it has, or isn't exposed as a native element of that cloud service. So this kind of dual level kind of works quite well on that side. But the whole stack is open source. It supports Linux, Mac OS, and Windows. The whole open source thing, again, that's core to what we do. We think it's very important. I mean, my daily driver is actually it's Ubuntu on a laptop, a Linux user since Manchester Computing Centre days, a few tens of years ago. But that kind of experience of having complete transparency in the code is very important. You think about the trust that you have in that. You called it an operating system. That's a very good name for it. I think the kind of that interface to the cloud that you have, unless you can see exactly what it's doing, then you have to have that to be able to trust it. So the open source element is very important for us. And then of course, Chromium is open source, Node is open source. That whole stack is there, and it works across all the major platforms.
So to be clear, what kind of data is going back to you from my system? One of the concerns that I had up front was, if I'm going to give you access to 60 or 70 of my most used applications, what are you collecting back from me on that side?
Sure. So all of the kind of kind of important secure data is kept on your device and nowhere else. So if you think about the the API key to read your email, all of the login details that you might use as a password save functionality, for example, all that is stored completely on your system and nowhere else. You can kind of send some of the kind of metadata over to Wavebox. We do an opt-in analytics if you want. That helps us know, how many users are using it, quite a few. We actually have a business proposition which allows corporates to basically say, do you know what, for my employees, I'd really like to know how many of the cloud services I'm paying for they're actually using. And that's more of a commercial offering that we're kind of rolling out. But again, that's opt-in on an organization level. One thing that we have done, which is actually quite useful, is because we split out the authentication into your private key stuff, which stays on your machine, and an overall kind of who are you and tell me if something changes, it means you can opt in to have a server notify you of changes. And we do this for Google services. I'll give you an example here. I run my system, I may have maybe 6 or 7 different Gmail accounts. Now, I don't want to necessarily run 6 or 7 kind of Gmail instances on my machine. They run about 300 megs each. So what I like to do is kind of not have them running at all. But then if an email hits, I really want to know that this email is there. So what we do there is we tell Google, do you know what, for this account, just tell us if anything changes whatsoever. We don't know what changes. All we do is we basically send down an instruction to your machine to say, by the way, something's happened on your account. That's all we know. That wakes up your account on your machine, and then you go and check and ask Google yourself with your own local credentials what that information is. So that kind of finite, kind of quite granular kind of permission basis means that everything secure stays on your machine, but you leverage then the kind of cloud push notification scheme of allowing you to spin down the JavaScript stack for your Gmail, for example, on your machine, but not miss out on the messaging and the emails that happen. We think that's quite a nice balance because you get to use good performance on your local machine and use the cloud for what it's good for, which is telling you what's new, and then you engage with it when you need to.
Well, the performance on all of my systems that I'm running it on is actually quite good, and I guess that's you put the apps that are not being used to sleep to preserve the memory. I've noticed that, and the only thing I guess it's just the nature of the system is that it is a bit of a bother to reinstall it on a new system and then have to kind of go through all of the accounts and re-enter the data. But I guess that is difficult for you to do if you don't have access to all the data yourself.
It is. I mean, again, our default is to err on the side of security, and you're in control of your data, and that's it. I mentioned earlier this kind of business focus that we're doing as kind of a one branch of what we're doing at Wavebox. And one of those things that we're going to allow people to do is have kind of like an encrypted store that they allow their employees to kind of load onto their devices when they log in. So, if you think about it, in a business, maybe you've got like 30, 40 people and an extra person joins. It'd be really great if they just log into Wavebox and straight away, they're part of the Slack team, the Gmail account, there's the Trello board ready to go, all the stuff that you need to just kind of hit the ground running. We allow that business then to load that in as a predefined profile for Wavebox. But we're very careful to roll that in gradually because we want to make sure that all of the security elements and encryption works in terms of making sure all of that is correct.
And how many people are on your team right now?
We're actually quite a tiny company with 4 people, but we've been working together. We've actually done a few kind of exits beforehand, so we kind of like this space. We are very passionate in our use of open source technologies. So we've been involved as contributors to Node and lots of other things in the past. And being kind of native to the cloud, it allows us to kind of use our product every single day. And, everybody we know, they use Wavebox in the same way. And as any tool that gives you a productivity leverage, we find that using our own tool allows us to very easily give that focus during the day so that when we're dealing with one certain thing, that allows us to do it without being bombarded with all the Slack messaging and whatever can happen and to, kind of distract you. You kind of probably seen this experience, but then have this overall window as to what has changed and what I need to react to.
Okay, and what's the sales pitch? It's free to use, but there's a paid option. I think I picked up I think it was $20 US, and that's per year.
It is, yes, that's right. So it's free to use. You can download it. You can try it out. We have a pro version, which is $20 for a year. This allows you to unlock. We've got over 1,000 cloud systems that we've kind of checked that work with Waybox correctly. And it also allows you to use this cloud-based notification system. You can download it from GitHub and compile it yourself. So if you're on Linux, just do that and you're good to go. And
no, there's a snap actually on Linux. It's just snap install Wavebox, and I'm good to go regardless of my underlying system.
Absolutely, it's that easy. And again, being open source, we kind of open it up in terms of any people who want to look at the code. We have a couple of pull requests that we've accepted, so we really like to engage with the community that way as well.
Yeah, it's an elegant system. It's terrific to use. I've become a fan. You can count me as an evangelist for now. So thank you very much for your time and for the and for the application. Like I said, I think it is rare that something pops up from in my perspective out of the blue that changes your workflow. And you've got a big supporter here, and we thank you very much for being on the air today.
Delighted. Thank you for the opportunity.
And we're back. Let's take a quick dive here into what we've been playing. It has been not a lot of gaming this week, but we did get some time in. Let's take a quick look at our recently played games. Look at that. Pillars of Eternity 2 Deadfire. Of course we bought it. Of course we're preloading it. Of course we've already talked about it. So let's leave it there. Can't wait for that to land on May 8th. We went back and jumped into Space Tyrant once again. I have to say, this is just such a super enjoyable game. It was our February giveaway. It's just it's a terrific game that is just you pick it up and you play it, and before you know it, you've kind of put an hour into it. Great. It looks good, it plays well, and it's a lot of fun. Blue Wizard Digital should be proud of their work. It's got a very positive rating on Steam and 145 reviews. Seems a little light to me, in the sense of maybe the sales are not where they need to be. If you are looking for a game to play, it's on sale right now, minus 33% for $15 Canadian. That's probably $10, $11 US and maybe £10. Strongly recommended. Go get this game. Do yourself a favor. Get this game and play it and let me know what you think. I actually launched Disgaea 2 for the PC. There's a Linux version of this JRPG, and I've had it. You can see I put 85 minutes into it. Was in the mood for something Japanesey, and this game is both from Japan and easy. And so I gave it a shot. I mean, this is something that is probably playable on an emulator as well. I do like the fact that there's a native Linux version. I'm not sure how these guys decided to. It's the only one in the series that is available on Linux. Disgaea 1 is available, but it's not available on Linux. It is fully playable via Wine, however. And then I don't know what number they're on right now. I think Disgaea 5 is coming out, or 6. Whatever the most recent number is due out in the next little while. No visibility in a Linux port there. This game plays well. It's fun. If you're looking for a JRPG on Linux, you've got this basically as probably one of the top choices out there. I would say Danganronpa as well, part 1 and 2, though that's not an RPG, but it is very Japanesey. Recommended. I haven't finished the game. I've got to get back to it at some point and give it a shot. Neverwinter Nights Enhanced Edition. You can see I put 2 hours into the game, and I continue to be frustrated by this game and by Beamdog's work with it, because the Linux version is broken. Sorry guys. We appreciate you working with us on your giveaway, and I love having the game on Linux, but the resolution scaling is broken. The graphics options are not working the way that they should be, and for me, I've got 2 or 3 systems that I could play this on. I've got a 4K machine in the living room. At 4K, because the resolution scaling is broken, it's not playable. The text is too small. I've got my XPS 13, which is a 13-inch monitor on my laptop. But again, that's a small screen, so I want to scale the resolution up, the UI up, so that I can see things better, but the resolution scaling is broken, and so therefore I can't play it there. The only machine that I can play it on under Linux is the system that it's running right now, which is a 970 in the den that is connected to 3 monitors, one of which is a 60-inch Samsung TV, and that one is fine. Okay, but a game that requires a 60-inch screen at 1080p to be playable for me, who is a big fan of Beamdog and the game, is really cutting down on your ability to basically have your customers be happy. Now, I decided to basically run this. I've run it under Windows, and the resolution scaling works. So I thought to myself, I wonder if this works under Wine. So I ran it. I loaded it on Lutrix. There is no script for it, so I just basically manually installed it, loaded up fine, ran it under Wine, and it works. It works under Wine on Linux better than it works natively, which is a shame. That is a shame. Okay? And that needs to be fixed, because I don't want to play it under Wine. I've got a Linux native version. I am probably one of the most pro-Wine people in the Linux community, and I refuse to cross that line when games are better under emulation, whatever Wine is called, than native. Okay, so I'm comfortable that Beamdog is going to do the right thing, because their other games, Planescape Torment, for example, works wonderfully under Linux native with perfect resolution scaling. So whatever these issues are right now, I'm sure they're going to be fixed. But in the meantime, I'm not playing the game anymore. What else? Planescape Torment. The reason this is here is I've been trying to get back into it. I've only got 8 hours, but I also ran it to test the resolution scaling over there, which, as I said, works well. The other game that I've been playing recently is Into the Breach, which is playable under Wine. You can see 48 minutes, so I'm not really putting a lot of time into it. I was testing that to see how well it was running under Wine. Perfect. I mean, it's a perfect game under Wine. I got to put more time into that. Rise of the Tomb Raider. I am happy to say that on my preferred platform of Solus, the new driver, the 397 driver, is now available, and that, coupled with the game mode option, now works perfectly under Solus. So I'm going to jump back into Rise of the Tomb Raider in the next little while and finish that game off. Not a problem. Some benchmarks that I ran, Solus versus Windows. You're getting roughly 10 frames per second more in Windows, but fully playable. My monitor is a 60 hertz monitor, and I'm well above that on high on either platform. So that I set up VSync, and so it really makes no difference between the one platform or the other, for me in any case. Darkest Dungeon, is going to be forever up on my playing list. And of course, XCOM 2, which I dove in there last week as well. Okay, let's take a look and see what we've been tweeting. And we're back. All right, let's go and take a look now and see what we've been tweeting. It's been a busy week of tweets here at Mostly Linux, and let's jump into it and see what we've been talking about this week. Okay, this first one here. So, thanks to almost 200 and counting free speech advocates at New World Hominin has raised the funds required to fund the security detail for her event at Wilfrid Laurier University. Sadly, I expect further shenanigans from her anti-liberty detractors. Sad to see so many youngsters turning to fascism, and that is very sad. For those of you that are not local to our country here in Canada, or maybe across the U.S., because it certainly has taken a global interest, this young lady, Lindsay Shepherd, was browbeaten by her professors. She's a teaching assistant, a graduate student at Wilfrid Laurier University, and she made the sin of presenting an interview of Jordan Peterson in her class without first identifying that he is a hateful, racist, transphobic, disgusting human being. So they brought her in front of this committee, her professor, the head of the department, and some human rights advocate, let's say. And there's a recording online. I encourage you to go back and listen to the recording. It was frankly quite disgusting. She recorded the discussion, released it, and then it went viral. So she's been struggling with, well, on the one hand, she's become a celebrity, and that is very valuable. And, similar to some of the kids down at that horrible shooting in Florida, from I guess, the anti-gun side, let's say. She's become a free speech celebrity. And she started up a new club, a new society called the Laurier Society for Open Inquiry. And what that is basically a free speech club where the idea is, without supporting the speech or the speaker in terms of what the message is, but supporting their right to deliver the message. And so, I mean, frankly, what they do is they go out and find controversial speakers and they basically bring them to the campus, which is valuable. That's what a university is all about. And they've tried a few times, and what happens is the progressive left-wing, neo-Marxist, let's say, students protest, pull fire alarms, make threats, and the security costs for the events go through the roof. And the university basically decided they couldn't bear the cost anymore. So they basically passed a new rule that said that if you're going to be having an event on our campus, you have to cover the security costs, which is an ingenious way to ban free speech, because it's only the controversial speakers whose speech needs to be protected. If you're going out there at a university campus and saying you're in favor of transgender identity rights, you're not going to have a bunch of students protesting you and driving your security costs up. If you, on the other hand, have the opposite, a speaker that is opposed to those rights, rightly or wrongly, there's going to be significant security costs because everybody else is going to protest. And certainly I would not impose any restrictions on the right of free assembly, but I wouldn't impose them on the right of free speech either. And when the right of assembly of one group affects the right of free speech of another group, it is difficult to choose one side or the other, but I think it is impractical to impose the costs on a university on only one side. So that's the current situation. And so what Lindsay Shepherd did here is she went to GoFundMe and asked for $5,000 or so to cover the cost, which she funded relatively quickly. I don't think this is a viable long-term solution. You can't have one side or one particular ideological perspective constantly having to carry the burden of additional costs because the other side is going to be conducting possibly illegal activity. That's just not right. Okay, and that is not free speech in terms of a university, and that cost should be borne by the university rightly, in order for the university to encourage free speech. But I don't think the university has any intention of encouraging free speech in this situation. My advice to Lindsay is to, rather than to fund these things on a one-off basis, to fund a legal challenge to the university and to the province, which runs the university here in Ontario, about the unfairness that this is an unreasonable infringement of the not only the right to security but the right to freedom of expression of just one particular group of people. Completely unfair. That's unfortunately where we are. We helped to fund it, and happy to see that it's going forward. Let's see what else. Dragon Age 2 is now backwards compatible on the Xbox One and the Xbox One X. I've got great memories here. This is a much maligned game. I don't know. People didn't like it for a lot of reasons. I enjoyed it. It's probably one of the last non-open world, kind of AAA RPGs. You are basically on a defined path. You've got a lot of options in terms of character development, but the story is the story, and it was much maligned as a result. I really like it. I mean, there was some legitimate issues. I kept going through dungeons and thinking that I was redoing a dungeon. Although I wasn't. I was actually a new dungeon, but it looked exactly the same as the 5 other ones. That is a problem, but I really enjoyed the game. I'm not going to go back and play it again, but it was a little fun. What are the other kind of hot stories? The great GPU crisis. Is it coming to an end? Apparently it is. We're seeing an increase in the supply of GPUs, prices going back to MSRP. I'm not going to buy a new GPU right now, though. I mean, I've got more than enough here, but it is a little too little, too late because the new GPUs are coming out, the 1180 or 11 series or 20 series, depending on how Nvidia decides to name them. Plus, new Radeon GPUs are on the horizon. Whether I'm happy with a 1080 or a 1080 Ti or not, I'm going to wait for the 1180 Ti to come out first, or the 1170 or whatever those numbers are, and see what the premium is to the current price, see what the performance improvement is, and then see if the current systems go down in price any further. If this prices had gone down to MSRP probably a month and a half ago, I'd probably be all in right now. But I think we're in the tail end of the current generation of GPUs. Okay, one last thing here. We continue to troll Elon Musk. If you listened to last week's episode, we complained about some ridiculous tweet that Elon Musk had about building a cyborg dragon. He tweeted out, "We're building a cyborg dragon," and I took him to task for that because my point at the time was being, why don't you just focus on building cars? Okay, like he's not building a lot of cars right now. He's having production complaints up the yin yang, and focusing on building cyborg dragons, whatever the hell that means. I don't even know what the hell he's talking about half the time. So we talked about Elon Musk and mentioned that we're not fans because he doesn't follow through on his outrageous claims and promises. And this week he had a bit of a meltdown because he had a conference call. His numbers were released for Tesla. The numbers were horrible. but maybe not as horrible as intended. There was some positive, nuggets in there, but he lost over $1 billion in the last 3 months. Okay, this is not a profitable company. He's below target on his margins. He's below target on his production, and he was taken to task by stock market analysts, basically asking him questions. And so what he did was he was asked a couple of questions on this front by senior level Wall Street analysts, and he basically said the equivalent of boring, next question, boring, and then he went off to some known friendly face on YouTube, at which point his stock price immediately declined by 5, 6, 7%. This is not the behavior of a well-balanced human being. I don't know him myself. I'm sure he is balanced. I'm sure he's frustrated, but he has not delivered. He hasn't delivered, and you don't get a free pass because you've got a nice name or you wear a nice tie. Okay, in business, long term, you've got to deliver the goods. So he came back and he basically said, "Hey, listen to this. Please ignore this thread unless you're interested in a tedious discussion about Tesla stock. Yeah, you're one of the most valuable companies in the world, and this is a stock market call. You are a publicly traded company with public market shareholders. I think that everybody on the call that is listening to this call and wants to discuss your numbers with you is not going to see the numbers being tedious." The fact that he sees his financial performance as being tedious is problematic, let's say. And then he goes on to say, first, it's important to know that Tesla is the most shorted, meaning most bet against, stock on the market and has been for a while. Yeah? And so what? That's the market, okay? Some people buy, some people sell. Some people think it is the most overhyped, overvalued stock in the history of the world, and I probably would tend to be on that side of the thing. So people taking active bets against a ridiculously overvalued stock and still being ridiculously overvalued means that you're doing a much better job promoting than they are shorting. And then he goes on to basically say that the two questioners I ignored on the Q1 call are sell-side analysts who represent a short seller thesis, not investors. BS Elon. He's losing it, okay? Being a sell-side analyst does not mean that you represent short sellers, okay? Being a sell-side analyst means that you represent an investment bank or an investment dealer. That is the sell side, okay? And what they do is they employ research analysts that are independent to advise their clients, which are the buyers. So they do represent the investors. They represent investors, and an investor can be somebody that goes long your stock, in other words, believes it's going to go up, or that goes short your stock. Both are investors. Long and short sellers are both investors, and both have a legitimate basis for wanting information. And for an investment dealer who is neutral, the research analyst who is neutral, they serve both. Okay, if you think that a research analyst is there to promote your stock, you are deeply, deeply mistaken, Elon. So, anyways, we trolled him, and I posted here, a market consists of both buyers and sellers. You fight the shorts with superior performance, indisputable facts and data, not by throwing temper tantrums. This backfired. You gave them a huge lift, and now things are worse than ever. You gotta learn from your mistakes, folks. You gotta learn from your mistakes, or you are doomed to forever repeat them. We'll be right back after this. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is Pillars of Eternity 2 Deadfire, which we are very happy to announce is our next giveaway. Pillars of Eternity 2 Deadfire. We're giving away copies of that to our listeners this week. The game releases May 8th. We are very, very excited. We've pre-ordered it. And we paid for it, by the way, fully paid for, pre-order. And we bought the Obsidian pack, which is ridiculously expensive. I'm not even sure what is included in it. You know what? They have to fix this because, you know, look at this. So it says pre-purchase Pillars of Eternity 2 Deadfire Obsidian Edition. Okay? It's $86 Canadian. And how am I supposed to know what's in it? I don't know what's in it. You know, if I add it to the cart here, it you know, you have to actually go off-site, as far as I know, somebody correct me, to figure out what exactly is included in this Deadfire Obsidian Edition versus the Deluxe Edition versus the Standard Edition. I have no idea. I don't care. This is my most anticipated game of the year. I cannot wait to jump into this thing. I had a great time playing the first game, and I can say that Obsidian is one of my favorite developers, bar none. Here's a list of their games, including one of my favorite games of all time, Knights of the Old Republic. Fully playable, by the way, on Steam, and it's $3.73. Buy that if you need something to tide you over until May the 8th. But check out these games. I mean, these guys are one of the premier RPG developers in the world. And we're happy to be giving away a couple of copies of this game to our listeners. Now, listen up. Here's how we're going to do this, okay? Our next giveaway will begin shortly after this airs. We currently have, how many? I've got 276 followers on Twitter, okay? I'm going to give away one copy when we get to 300. So what I want you to do is to enter. I want you to basically tweet at mostly_Linux, and also then include at Obsidian, and then hashtag Pillar of Linux, because that's what Obsidian is. They are a pillar of the Linux community, and so that's going to be our hashtag for the giveaway, Pillar of Linux. Copy at Obsidian, copy at mostly_Linux. When we get to 300, from all of the people that use that hashtag, we're going to pick a winner and we're going to give you a copy. It's a standard game. You can upgrade it later. We do what we can here, but we're not, you know, kind of unlimited means, as they say. We're also going to give a copy away. We have our own subreddit now, mostly_Linux on Reddit. Just go there, do a search for mostly_Linux. You're going to find basically us as the only lonely users in there. We want to increase the size of that group. So once we get 20 posts, so just, you can do both, by the way. You can post on Twitter, hashtag Pillar of Linux, and then you can go over to the subreddit, mostly_Linux, and post there, hashtag Pillar of Linux. You're going to be able to see the post that I'm going to make up for the giveaway. Post in that, hashtag Pillar of Linux, and once we get to 20 posts in there, I'm going to give away another copy to the people just there. So the one is going to be for the people that post on Twitter. The other one is going to be the people that post at mostly_Linux. And we'll get it out there, and we'll get it in your hands, and you can play it, and we can also get a little attention for the game inside of the Linux community. And that's it. It's been a busy episode. Lots of stuff to talk about. Had a great time talking to Rhys Jones. Thank him once again very much for joining us today. And we'll be back next week with a report on Pillars of Eternity 2 here on Mostly Gaming. See you next week.